Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed day one of Rethink as much as I did. So many great presentations yesterday. And so we're really excited to be presenting on ESG strategy and reporting and diving a little bit more into that. A few introductions to get started. I'm Steph Fox. Next slide, please. I'm Steph Fox, and I'm part of the sustainability team here at BDO. I've spent much of my career working in the nonprofit sector. I've worked across community, university advancement, healthcare, philanthropy, and really excited by the conversations we're having over these days, and of course, what occupies our minds in the workplace. One of the conversations happening yesterday, and I hope you caught it, it was so great, with Mike Abbott in our Ottawa office and with Daniel Dubois of Shopify. The conversation was around digitization, but what Daniel spent a lot of time talking about was the value of good humans and good humans in the workplace and talent and just that people are at the core of our business. And so I'm really fortunate to spend all of my work days with this incredibly, exceptionally great human, Allison Jutzi. And so Allison is joining me today. Ali, we'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to day two of Rethink. As Steph mentioned, we both are very, very passionate about sustainability and ESG, and we're fortunate that we get to work with clients and help them build their strategy and communicate their value proposition through an effective ESG report every day. A little bit about myself. I'm a lawyer by training, but I am fortunate enough to work in sustainability under our risk advisory services team. So, I'll pass it back over to you, Steph, and enjoy the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allison. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so sustainability, ESG. Some of us talk about CSR, focused on social purpose. There's so much language in this space. And so I just wanted to take a bit of time today to touch on that and build a bit of a foundation. For any of you who attended the panel discussion yesterday, led by Kyle Hume in our office, Kyle did a great job of providing an overview. But if you didn't attend that, wanted to do a little bit of that today. So sustainability and ESG, are they the same? Are they different? How do we talk about them? So sustainability we really see as the what. So it's corporate performance, it's how we focus our operations. And so, it's very much the sustainable business, and how we make that happen is through ESG. So ESG is the how of that. And we get there by introducing frameworks into our business, by focusing on metrics that are important to us and important to our stakeholders and reporting out on that. Next slide, please. Okay, so power of sustainability. What is the case for it? Why is it important that we do it? We put this slide here because this is the conversation: is how do we have a strong, financially healthy, high-performing organization on one side, and also be doing really great things within the walls of our organization and out into the world. And these are not separate things. One thing supports the other. And so that's what we always talk about, is that by doing good, that's helping solve some of those environmental and social problems and addressing the things that are important to all of us. How can we do very well as an organization? And so an example of that would be, if we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and how we focus on that in our organizations. What practices are we bringing in? What behaviors are we ensuring that are in the workplace? And what environment are we creating for our people? If we think about the work that we do there to do really great things, what that is supporting is it's supporting us in becoming a place people want to be. And it helps us in attracting the best talent, keeping the best talent, and developing them so that we can outperform our competition. So by doing good, we can do very well. Another way that we talk about it, and again, Kyle touched on this a little bit yesterday, is around mission and purpose. And how are those different, but how are they very much related to what we're seeing on this slide here? So, mission is a point in time for an organization. Our mission statements can change. They do change as market factors change, as our business evolves. Um, and so mission is, our goals within the operation, whereas our purpose is very much, the ethos of our organization, the behaviors that we aspire to demonstrate every day. And it's what gets us out of bed in the morning. So, if our mission is focused on solving problems and in the interest of long-term performance, some of those things can keep us up at night, whereas our purpose is our constant, and it's what gets us out of bed in the morning. So, what we aim to do and what we all should be aiming to do is, focus on doing good and having the confidence that that will lead to long term corporate sustainability. Next slide, please. So you would have seen when you entered the session that our team here at BDO has put a number of polls out for you. Now, I cannot see the polls, but they are there. And so on your right-hand side of the presentation screen, please click on Stage and then Polls to access those. And I will be talking through those. So if you didn't get a chance to go in and give your responses, please do that, because of course if Allison and I were physically with you today, we'd be engaging with you and be having a lively discussion, I'm sure. So this is our attempt at that. So what are the biggest drivers of ESG in your organization? If you're looking at that poll, there are a number of drivers, and we'd love to hear from you on what is it that is the biggest one in your organization. So we have increasing investor and stakeholder demands, increasing regulatory requirements. So if your organization is driven by a compliance perspective, access to capital. For those of you who joined Mark Carney and Pierre Teifer's fireside chat yesterday, they certainly spoke to access to capital and how that is changing. So as banks and lenders and insurance and credit rating agencies are asking for this information, it is driving access to capital. Equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. Perhaps it's your brand reputation and how you're being received in your market. And what I touched on a little bit in an earlier slide, future talent and employee retention. Next slide, please. And another poll, so breaking it down a little bit further, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We'd love to hear from you about, what is, the most important thing, or what your eyes are looking at every day, and that your teams are gathering around every day under the environmental bucket. So what topic in environmental is most important to your stakeholders? Is it resource management, monitoring and controlling energy consumption and how you're using resources? Climate change, so of course reducing or remediating greenhouse gas emissions. Water management, both on the consumption side and contamination of treated and natural water sources. Waste management, so is it waste versus what's going to the landfill versus use or adoption of a recycling program. And biodiversity, so protecting our animals and natural habitats. So I'd love to hear from you all on that. I'll give an overview of the next poll you should be seeing as well. So with social, what topic in the social area of ESG are you most focused on? Is it health and safety? And when we say health and safety, we're talking about health and safety, not just of your employees, but also of your customers. Inclusion, equity, diversity, and employee care. Community involvement. And to be clear, when Allison and I are asking about community involvement, we're not just interested in how you show up in the communities around you in terms of your nonprofit partnerships, and community investment, but also how are you engaging with our Indigenous communities, political parties, and of course our community groups as well. Security protection, so client data security, supplier assessment, how are you, and if you are, um, assessing your suppliers, be it through like a process that you've created for evaluation and screening, and client customer profile to ensure that there's alignment there between your organization and their profile as a client. And finally, on governance, you should see that poll there as well. A bit more self-explanatory there. If we could move to the next governance slide, please, Steph. So out of governance topics, those being board processes and responsibilities, decision-making. Second, stakeholder engagement. How are you engaging with your stakeholders? Are you being are you having a frequent and common practice about communicating with them and sharing progress? Ethics and integrity, of course, your values, standards, and risk management, so identifying, monitoring, and mitigating risks, and also in that process identifying opportunities, so what drivers exist there. Another poll you should be seeing, and next slide for me, please, is does your organization have an official public-facing strategy? So are you going out to your stakeholders in a public way and sharing your plans and reporting on your progress? And of course, as you can see, options there are yes, you do have one, no, you do not, or it's on your radar and you plan to have one in the next 3 to 5 years. So very interested in that. And please, throughout the presentation, if you haven't had a chance to answer them, you can always go back and respond because we'd love to hear from you. Next slide, please. So for those of you who answered talent, that talent was one of the biggest drivers for you in your organization. I just wanted to focus in on that because it's relevant to all of us. For some, of course, it is a bigger driver. But if you didn't have a chance to read it, Larry Fink released his 2022 letter to CEOs earlier this week. It's certainly something I always read. I encourage you to as well. And so I just pulled this statement from his 2021 letter. Larry Fink writes, "A company that does not seek to benefit from the full spectrum of human talent is weaker for it, less likely to hire the best talent, less likely to reflect the needs of its customers and the communities where it operates, and less likely to outperform." So really, the big question is, will the best want to work for you? And, there's a ... after that. And what's the consequence if they don't? Because as we're all seeing, talent is a huge challenge. It's a very competitive market for employers now. And so if we're not welcoming the best people, and we're not keeping the best people, and we're not developing the best people, someone else is. And that's a great thing for their organization, and it's a very challenging thing for yours. So if you're not talent focused, that's certainly a consequence that you could be facing. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we say sustainability is transformational, of course, transformational is one of those buzzwords. We talk about digital transformation, we talk about transformation in corporate culture, we speak of it in many different places. But what do we mean when we say sustainability is transformational? Well, as we're seeing in headlines, it's driving change in ways and at a speed that we've never seen before. I pulled just a few headlines from recent weeks that I think are great examples and that demonstrate how it's transforming business. And when we think about just the name of this conference is so aptly named Rethink, because we are all rethinking how we're doing business, how we're showing up in the community, how we're welcoming people to our organizations, how we're engaging with stakeholders. So we're definitely rethinking everything, and we're transforming the ways that we used to do things. So in financial news, UBS Asset Management divested holdings in 5 major energy companies after they did not show sufficient progress in managing climate risk. This was, divestiture was a topic that Pierre Teifer and Mark Carney covered a little bit and spoke to for a time in their fireside chat yesterday. So really interesting perspectives on that. In food sourcing, we all know Aramark to be the giant partner of food services for university clients. And in the US, Aramark had introduced climate-friendly food choices across university campuses. So that's a really exciting, positive headline. Transportation, Walmart, FedEx ordered thousands of electric vans as they change over their fleets from General Motors subsidiary BrightDrop. And in governance, just before we closed out the calendar year, our Prime Minister started, making statements around Canada moving toward mandatory climate disclosures. So we're seeing it in governance, we're seeing it in finance, we're seeing it everywhere. And whoever you are and whichever company you're calling home these days and thinking about sustainability through this lens, it's going to impact you. So it impacts all of us, and it's certainly driving a lot of change. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the benefits? We know why we need to be focusing on it, but it's important to celebrate the wonderful things that happen when we do shift to operating with a sustainability lens. So as we've talked about, it drives innovation, it encourages change, and really positive change. So it's driving innovation, it helps us manage risk. It reports that link between the strategy and planning that we're doing and our financial operational performance. We say it improves data, but it also just not only does it improve our data, but it gives us more to think about. One of the sessions yesterday spoke about data and how it's managed, and there's no shortage of data. It's really a question of how are we bringing it all together? How are we bringing data from so many different sources to tell the story that we need to understand, to then plan around. And so when we start focusing on sustainability and operating through this lens, it gives us more data to help inform our decisions, and we'll make better decisions because of it. I spoke to access to capital earlier. More and more lenders and credit rating agencies are going to demand that you have a plan. If you want to access capital, you're going to have to show what you're currently doing, what your strategy is to do tomorrow, and you'll have to report back on that. So we're seeing higher expectations for lending as well. And then talent, we spoke about that, and the benefit of growing your talent through a sustainability lens. Next slide, please. All right, and at this point, I'd love to turn it over to Allison to really dig into strategy, and there's so much to talk about there, and reporting frameworks. So over to you, Allie.
Great. Thanks, Steph. So again, hi, everybody. So just before we go and really talk about strategy and reporting, I do just want to spend a few minutes looking at some of the data behind the driving forces of ESG. So next slide, please, Steph. It's really important to understand these forces here, as each stakeholder group has different priorities that need to be evaluated when formalizing a strategy. So Steph spoke about access to capital, and investors and capital providers are really prioritizing companies that do implement a strong ESG strategy. 81% of Canadian investors now integrate ESG into their principles and decision-making criteria, along with 91% of banks that now monitor ESG along with global credit rating agencies. Regulation, we do predict that in 2023, there will be mandatory ESG reporting requirements coming soon. At the executive level, CEOs are now prioritizing ESG, with 81% believing that ESG factors will be critical for driving long-term success. This, along with the great war for talent, so ESG is now becoming an employee attraction and retention strategy, with 51% of employees saying that they won't work for a company with a strong ESG policy, along with 50% of millennials saying that they will switch employers based on their ESG policy. This data is indisputable and really should get organizations thinking about their sustainability plans. There's also a strong business case to be made, with 1 in 3 consumers saying that they will reconsider brands based on their ESG commitments, and 70% of consumers say that they are willing to pay an additional 5% for a green product. All of this data should sell the business case that we need to start investing in the strategy now. So next slide, please, Steph. So now just moving on to strategy and reporting. Based on the results, if you answered yes, you have a strategy, no, or you're thinking of it, it's great that you're here today because we're going to walk you through some of the basic components. So just moving on to the next slide, please, Steph. So what we're seeing here is the maturity model, and this really maps out the client journey in terms of sustainability. The majority of clients, I would say, are at that activating reactive phase. At this phase here, you're really talking to your stakeholders and trying to determine what's important to your organization and what you need to be prioritizing. Some companies we're working with are at that reactive stage, so there are some initiatives that they are managing, but ultimately we really want to work to the strategic, purpose-driven area where you're a leader in your organization and industry. However, the point is that sustainability is a journey and that there is no end. It's cyclical in nature, and you constantly want to be talking to your stakeholders. So next slide, please, Steph. So irregardless of where you might be on that maturity model, these are the 5 main phases that you want to start thinking through when either enhancing your existing strategy or starting to develop one. So first, you want to understand the unique ESG ecosystem that your organization operates in. Here, you'll want to really understand if there are any industry regulations that you need to be thinking of. You'll want to see what your competitors and peers are doing, and you'll want to talk to your stakeholders, both internal stakeholders, your employees and management, and your external stakeholders. So your investors if you're a public-facing company, your suppliers, or your clients and consumers. From there, we move on to strategy development. And here is where you're really mapping out the priorities and initiatives that your organization will start implementing. You'll start selecting the reporting framework that your organization will choose. Yet the issue here is that in the industry, there's not one harmonized reporting framework. There's multiple frameworks out there. I'm sure you've heard of SASB, GRI, TCFD, the World Economic Forum. So it's a bit of an alphabet soup. And what we're recommending organizations do is not just choose one reporting framework. There are certain criteria from each that are important to consider when putting together your own priorities year over year. We'll also want to do a gap assessment here. So once we figured out what's important to your stakeholders, we'll want to map out where your organization currently sits on this scale and what you need to do to really close that gap. From there, it's commitments and targets. So we heard Mark Carney speak yesterday about what gets measured gets managed, and this is true. So here you'll want to set tangible metrics and targets that your organization can report on year over year. An important consideration here is technology and ensuring that you have the proper sources to capture and monitor data year over year. Right now, there's no requirements that you need a third-party organization to audit your ESG report, but we do predict that this will be coming in the near future, and having the right technology in place that is auditable is essential. And then, of course, having a program governance structure in place. Again, what gets managed, gets measured, gets done. So ensuring that you have executive buy-in, an ESG steering committee in place, all will work towards ESG program success. And then finally, reporting. Organizations will publish an annual ESG report to their external stakeholders, but you'll want to start thinking through your communication and marketing plans around this, as how you communicate your priorities externally and internally will differ, and it will truly differentiate your organization from others. So just moving on to the next slide, please, Steph. I mentioned earlier how at the current moment, there's not one harmonized reporting framework, but there will be one, with due time. So at the moment, the issue is, understanding all the different disclosures underneath each of these components here and prioritizing which ones your organization needs to focus on. It's not expected that each organization chooses and manages every single disclosure underneath each component, and that's why it's really important to talk to your stakeholders. So on the polls, I noted that 66% of you say climate change is really important. So yes, we are finding clients, we recommend them that they absolutely manage their scope 1, scope 2 emissions right now. But also under environment, other considerations are your supply chain. Do you have environmental screening criteria? How do you screen your clients? Do you have any surveys or questionnaires that you implement? Waste management, how are you managing your waste? Water pollution, air pollution, biodiversity. These are all some of the core disclosures underneath this category. Moving on to social, majority of you mentioned that equity, diversity, and inclusion is a key priority at your organization, and that's fantastic as you have to prioritize having an equitable workforce. But also, how are you prioritizing your clients and your employees' health and safety? What about education? Do you invest in your employees and provide them with further education opportunities? And community, are you investing in your community and giving back, based on where your organization operates? And then, of course, governance. A lot of the reporting frameworks do ask about, your governance structure. They want to know how you're actively managing your ESG issues. How transparent are you in tax? What reporting framework do you have? Do you have a reporting framework? What's your corporate policy, executive compensation? All of these are disclosures under some of the reporting frameworks that need to be considered and managed. So just moving on to the next slide, please, Gretchen. So, again, this is just a high-level overview of the foundational elements of an ESG program. Again, there's a lot more that goes into it, but I just wanted to touch on a few key points here. So governance, I spoke about the importance of effectively managing your ESG program and also ensuring that you have senior leadership buy-in and executive support. Often having a strong ESG strategy will require a change management exercise, as you really will be changing policies and procedures. So having that buy-in at that C-suite level is essential. The other point under strategy I want to talk about right now is, most organizations have a mission and a vision statement. But what we're seeing in the market is organizations now need to move and become purpose-driven. And what I mean by this is you need to ask yourself the question, what is unique to your organization? And then if your organization were not to exist, what gap would there be in the world? The answer to this is your organization's purpose. That's something we work through with clients, and we'll develop a purpose statement, as that's one of the disclosures under some of the reporting frameworks. Also, business plan integration. Your sustainability strategy should not be a standalone plan and needs to be integrated into your business operations. Along with risk management here, ultimately too, having an ESG program becomes a risk management exercise. So does your organization have the proper risk remediation plans and timelines? Do you have proper enterprise risk assessments and controls to mitigate any emerging ESG issues that come up? And then, of course, targets and measurements. So forming tangible, realistic commitments are absolutely important to report back to your stakeholders annually. I mentioned about the technology piece. So, we do predict that third-party assurance of your ESG reports will soon become mandatory. So implementing the right technology to have this audible is a great idea to start thinking through right now. And then again, you really want to work with your communications team and marketing team to communicate this externally as well as internally, as a part of this is also a brand exercise, and it will differentiate your company and organization from others. So with that said, we would now love to open it up to questions, and we'll bring Steph back up onto the stage here. And we're happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Thanks, Allison. I see we do have a question. Does BDO have business partners who require our company to meet specific ESG targets? And by the same token, does BDO have requirements that we expect our business partners, not just our suppliers, to meet, especially interested in environmental targets?
It's a really good question. So I mentioned earlier that BDO, we're at the activating stage right now. So we're currently going through all of those 5 phases that I mentioned. So we are talking to our clients, we're talking to our internal employees, and we're right now formalizing those commitments. And Steph, what was the first part of that question?
It was specific to business partners who require our company to meet ESG targets.
So what I can say to that is in all of the RFPs that we're now receiving at BDO Canada, it's rare that we receive one that doesn't ask us about, our own ESG policies and plans. So even
Mhm.
though BDO is a private company, we're absolutely impacted by the supply chain. So, that's one of the drivers that I spoke about earlier. And, we're seeing this in our partners' requirements as well.
Absolutely. And also, just to add to that, Allison, on RFP responses, not just supply chain, but, getting back to our earlier discussion on equity, diversity, inclusion, and also accessibility, of course. This is something that's being asked of us as we go to the market, as we bid on work. Companies want to know what our policy is, what we're doing, how we're engaging with our teams, and where we stand on things. So absolutely, Beata, this is something that is absolutely essential in any contract we see across our firm's desk these days. Just looking, if we have any other questions. We have a couple more minutes. Just give it a moment. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And if we could perhaps, Steph Kovacs.
Oh, we just have one.
Oh,
We have one
we
last
have one
question
more.
there.
Okay. What can you tell us about ESG advisory boards? Good idea. How stable a group? Annual personal changes? Question. Alison, can I ask you to respond to that, given
Sure.
your involvement on our own?
Yeah, just a question clarification. Advisory boards, is the individual referring to internal steering committee, like having an internal committee manage ESG issues? And if so, that absolutely, you need to ensure you have the proper governance framework in place to actively manage ESG issues, to make decisions, and to implement any new ESG issues and considerations that will come up annually. So when I spoke about sustainability being a journey, it truly is a journey, and there's really no end. It's cyclical in nature, and we advise clients to really go through those 5 stages pretty much every year in order to enhance any existing commitments.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Hmm.
If we could go back, Steph K, if you can go back to our introduction slide, just so we have our contact information readily visible, if we can see it there. If any of you have any questions following the presentation, please reach out directly to Alison and I. We are always thrilled to continue the conversation and talk about this most important work that's important to us, important to you, and important to our clients. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day and enjoy Rethink.
Bye, everyone.